the Boston Celtics get back in the win column after a 2-game skid, beating the Miami Heat 129 to 116 in just a brilliant fourth quarter, just avalanche from three. After a game that, was up and down, the Celtics couldn't really get anything going. The Heat didn't get much going either on the other end. It was a back and forth battle, and the Celtics come away with a massive win and basically set up a strong stretch heading into Christmas. What's up, everyone, and welcome in to your Celtics source, home of your 16-11 third place Boston Celtics. And it's been a while since the Celtics have played. They haven't played since Monday, where they lost to the Pistons, and before that, the Milwaukee Bucks on Thursday, a stretch where they only had 2 games in 11 days with the NBA Cup going on. Which, side note here, they got to figure that out, how to fix the schedule, how to, even it out so you're not playing so many games before the NBA Cup and you can get more games afterwards and even out the schedule, because there was a pretty tough stretch for the Celtics before, heading into the sort of mini break here. And then coming out of it, it's pretty light through the new year. So they got to figure that out. But as for this game, the Celtics come into this game, as I said, looking for that sort of bounce back game. And the Heat, they're playing without Tyler Hero. They're playing without Mitchell and some of their other sort of stars. Obviously, they still have Jaime Jaquez and Bam Adebayo and the up-and-coming Kel'el Ware, who just continues to be a dominant factor on the offensive boards and definitely showed tonight. But that being said, the Heat, they go in with this double big lineup. And Jordan Walsh is guarding Bam Adebayo to start this game and for much of the first half. And this sort of makes sense as, normally Jordan Walsh would be guarding the other team's best guard, but the Heat don't really have a guard without Tyler Hero. They don't play that strategy or that style. And if you're the Celtics and you're playing small with just one center in Kata's out guarding Ware, who can take threes, and so you need a smaller guy who is willing to guard a guy like Bam Adebayo. And at first, it didn't work out well. Jordan Walsh didn't pick up, that many fouls or anything, but the Miami Heat were attacking the Celtics constantly on the glass. They struggled to get any sort of momentum from the Celtics on the defensive end, right? Because every time, the Celtics would do a good job of, forcing a bad shot or a turnover, the Heat would get it right back, either from a missed shot by the Celtics or just an offensive rebound. And, Jordan Walsh, we're going to talk about him in just a second. But I think, the Heat sort of, read up on the Celtics' tendencies before this game. Because early in the first half, they were sending 2, 3, 4 players even sometimes towards the boards on their own end instead of getting back, because they knew sort of how vulnerable the Celtics were at giving up those offensive rebounds. And it worked, right? At some point, right, if you don't come away with the rebound, it's easy for the Celtics to get out in transition if you're sending 4 or 5, sometimes your entire team at the boards. But the Heat were able to come away with it with the size that they had in Kel'el Ware and Bam Adebayo and, sort of corner crashers from Jaime Jaquez and others. And it really just prevented the Celtics from getting any sort of momentum in that first half. Now, the Heat weren't making shots either, so it stayed a pretty close game. And, I think part of the reason that it stayed such a close game was because of Jaylen Brown's slow start, and I want to talk about him next. Obviously, I think, Jaylen Brown and Derrick White finished the game just on a spectacular run, a lot of those points coming in the fourth quarter. But before we even get there, right, in these first, 2 quarters of the game, Simons is picking up early fouls while trying not to get boxed out on some of those crashes. right? I think Simons had a couple like push in the backs, some sloppy fouls that he continues to work through. Simons, it's been an interesting year for him because, he's been great coming off the bench, second unit scoring wise. But while he's out there, the lineups haven't done well. Right? He's done his part offensively because he's only played limited minutes, and he's done enough offensively. But other guys playing with him on the bench haven't been able to, feed off of him. Right? He'll be scoring like 13 points off the bench, playing just 20 minutes or whatever. But the bench lineups will be getting outscored like 47-13, like they did against the Pistons. Right? So it's sort of just that sort of ISO, type of offense from Simons. Now, I don't think he's a bad player in any way. The defense is a separate issue, but I think the offense, he's just so used to being that sort of one guy that does all the work offensively and doesn't care one bit about defense. And that's what he would go out and do, and he was never coached differently because the Portland Trailblazers, weren't really that invested in the defensive end at the time. Now this year it's a little bit different with Drew Holiday sort of demanding a defensive presence. But before that, right, Simons, when Damian Lillard wasn't on the floor, it would just be Simons. And in the last 2 years, it was just Simons guarding controlling the entire offense, and he's not used to kicking it out to shooters as much as he is really required to on this team, and it's been a struggle for him. And then obviously the defensive end, the fouls, the getting lost on backdoor cuts continue to be a problem for him. But we know that it's at this point in his career, it's not really a project worth investing in if you're the Celtics. Right, they're probably just going to get rid of him at the end of the season, let him walk, just dump the salary. Probably the best way to do it. You're not going to get a trade at this point. They weren't able to find a trade for him before the season started, which they desperately tried to do. But Jaylen Brown. Jaylen Brown doesn't get a single bucket until 4 minutes into the second quarter. A very extremely quiet first half offensively. But then the adjustments came in the second half. He didn't have a shot going, early to start this game. And quite frankly, he didn't even take that many shots. I think he was just pushed off of his spot by Bam Adebayo and some of the really solid defensive forwards for the Miami Heat, right? The Miami Heat do a great job defensively, and they always have, especially Bam Adebayo. He's one of the better defensive centers in the league. He does finish the game, on 9 of 18 field goals, 2 of 4, but just wasn't a great night for him in terms of going to his, bread and butter shot in that sort of mid-range pull-up. And he found a way to do what the best guards in the league do, something that he hasn't done much of for his career up until this point, but he gets to the line, something that we've been looking for him to do more of, whether that's, getting better calls, right? Obviously, I've talked about this before. He doesn't get a great whistle. He actually does pick up a tech early in the game for arguing, but it doesn't turn out to be a problem as the game goes on. But he just lives at the free throw line in that third quarter. I mean, on this night, right, after, missing, 7 of 14 free throws against the Pistons, he comes into this game and goes 10 for 11 from the free throw line. Puts that behind him, that performance, and moves on to a game where everyone knows he has to do a better job at the free throw line. Right? He's like a 76% free throw shooter for his career, and you can't be that if you're a superstar in this league. You can say whatever you want about the average being around there, but the superstars shoot in the 80s, some even in the 90s. And Jaylen Brown is capable of that, but he just hasn't been able to be that kind of player at the line, which is so surprising. But, it continues to be one of his biggest problems. Now, it's probably his only problem. Now, there are a couple problems. He has turnovers sometimes, but that's, for the most part, has gone away. Right now, he's playing his best season of his career, and the only thing holding him back from being I'm not even going to say 35-point scorer, but a top 5 MVP candidate is, the record's one thing, but the Celtics, if they continue to win, it's not going to be the record that's holding him back. It's going to be that efficiency, which he needs to continue to work on. But, he recognizes in this game that, it's not going to be his mid-range shot that's going to win him the game. It's going to be, taking it to the Miami Heat physically, right? Bringing it to them in the paint, forcing his way into foul shots at the line. Pretty bad defense by the Miami Heat to realize, the shots aren't falling and he's just going at you, forcing you to do some little jump, get out of position, and then going right through you. And doing it at a time when the Heat are moving, so he's not picking up those offensive fouls. He's not using his elbow. So just a great mindset game from Jaylen Brown. And obviously, he hits a big milestone in his career, passes Tommy Hauser for 13th, I believe it is. Maybe somewhere around there, 13th through 11th. I don't know the exact placement. But anyway, 13th, I'm going to say, for all-time Celtics scoring. It's another 30-point performance from him tonight. He also has 9 rebounds, 7 assists, right? So one of the things that, we credit these stars in the league is, when they don't have it scoring, when they don't have it scoring shooting-wise, then they revert to the free throw line. And if neither of those aren't working, then they become a playmaker because they're always going to have the attention on them, whether they're having a good shooting night or not. Someone's always going to be paying attention to them because that's just how superstars are in this league. And can you take that, attention, that sort of pressure, and convert it into making plays for others? And, step by step this season, he continues to bring his assists up, playmaking for others, just fantastic facilitating from Jaylen Brown this season. And then obviously in the absence of Jason Tatum and just how bad the defensive rebounding has been at times, he's made a concerted effort, along with, telling others to as well, to pick it up on the defensive end, putting your body on the line to grab defensive boards and prevent any sort of second opportunity from any team. And it's one thing if you're saying that, but then you're not going out there and doing that. But Jaylen Brown, for the most part, has been great on the defensive boards as well. Jordan Walsh also had a good impact early in this game, actually keeping the game close while Jaylen Brown had that slow start. He has these 3 excellent sort of strips on the ball in the first half, when I believe one was from Bam Adebayo, another one from where I forget the other one. But they're going up for the shot, and he's able to sort of strip it before they bring the ball up to their chest, right? Because once they bring it up, he's going to have a hard time going against those 7-footers. But he does a great job of just outsmarting, I won't even say outsmarting, but just brilliant defensive IQ that he continues to display this entire season. Constantly disrupting Heat players from shooting, strong defensive discipline, right? He's not picking up fouls. He did, part of the problem was in those last 2 games against the Bucks and the Heat is, Walsh was off the court for big stretches of time because he picked up some early fouls and had to sit for the second and third quarters. But in this game, he's able to survive that, not pick up cheap fouls, and then he's able to be just a brilliant, basically hustle guy down the stretch. But I think we all know, the star of this game, and it's Derrick White. He realizes Jaylen Brown, doesn't have it going tonight, and he just puts on a show right from the opening half. Now, there was a stretch in the third quarter where he went cold, and there was a spark plug in this game, you could say, that just jumpstart this just brilliant shooting stretch from the Celtics in the fourth quarter. That wasn't Derrick White, that was Sam Hauser, and we're going to talk about him in just a second. But he does have a great first half to open it up with 5 3-pointers, 3 blocks in the first half. That does tie some sort of Celtics record or whatever. not that important of a stat. He actually had 4 blocks, and then replay took it away and gave the block to someone else. But that being said, still contesting shots. He definitely impacted 8 or so shots, whether he picks up the block or not. But he just maintains that aggression throughout the entire game, finishing with 33 points, provides scoring, the rim protection, the energy on both ends. In that fourth quarter when everyone came alive, he just had that brilliant celebration where he does the pocket full of threes right in front of Bill Chisholm sitting courtside, like he loves to do. Fun fact, obviously Isaiah Thomas was in the building, Roman Anthony was in the building, stars showing out. Will Campbell was upstairs in a booth, took his shirt off and started drinking, I think it was a beer or whatever it was, and just started waving his shirt around. He was all hyped up. So just, a fantastic momentum and crowd energy game from the fans all night as well. And I'm going to talk about next the Sam Hauser spark plug that he was. But I first do want to say that, the Heat, they come into this game struggling from deep. They made just 9 threes total in their last 5 games or something like that. I don't even know how that's possible. It's not even like they were getting blown out or anything, but I can't even imagine, missing 9 threes or making 9 threes, less than 9 threes in a single game, let alone in the last 5 games total with the way the offenses are around the league at this point in 2026, 2025, whatever. But, the Miami Heat, they sort of flipped the script in this game, and they can't miss from 3 in that third quarter. The Celtics, they had stretches where they looked like they were going to pull away, and the Heat would just come right back down the other end and hit some sort of, dagger to prevent the Celtics from pulling away. But then Sam Hauser hits back-to-back threes to open up the fourth after, really struggling over the last 10 or so games. I mean, he's been ice cold. And he comes in, he extends the game, he comes into this game, really 0 for 11 in his last, 2 games or something like that, right? So he's been ice cold, and it goes back way farther than that. He just ignites the crowd. I mean, it was incredible to watch the way that this is a close game. Celtics can't really get threes going. It would seem like, as I just said, the Celtics would make a shot and the Heat would come right back down and answer. And then from there, the Celtics just took off, and it becomes a fourth quarter avalanche. I mean, Simons knocks down shots. Hugo Gonzalez had these 2 brilliant steals, forcing turnovers, brings it up the court, and hands it off for Sam Hauser, either on, a little trailing 3 or coming around a screen. Once Sam Hauser hit those 2 threes, he hit 2 more in this game, right after another. They hit 6 in a row. Then I believe they go like 10 for 12 in the quarter, something like that. And they bring this game from what was, a game they were down by 3 to a game where they get up by, I believe, 15 at one point, and then finish the game, obviously, with 13, with a 13-point win. Right, just a complete team takeover. As I've said multiple times, shooting is contagious on this team for some reason. Either everyone's making them or everyone's missing them, and that's great when they all make them because you win these games. Whenever the shooting comes alive, they just pull away and they don't look back. But then there are these games where everyone misses and it's a struggle, whether they, like the Pistons game where they can't make threes and they fall apart, or, it's just a close game throughout the game and they can't, win in crunch time. I'm not sure why that is. It would be nice if there was more staggered. That way you can actually be in some of these games where not everyone is shooting well, but it just doesn't seem like that's the case. But I mean, the home crowd energy just fuels the fourth quarter. Just a brilliant win for the Celtics. But yeah, I'm gonna wrap it up here. I think the Celtics, they respond to these tough last two games with, toughness, defense, depth to a team that over the last many years has been their rivalry. Now it's a little bit different with Jimmy Butler not around, Tatum not around. But it's still pretty big rivalry. The culture around it still stands, and just some star performances from Jaylen Brown and Derrick White to get you this win. But yeah, I'm gonna wrap it up here. Thank you guys so much for watching. Follow on social media on Instagram, TikTok. You can also check out podcast episodes, which we do after every third Celtics game. So that will be, this is actually the first, as we did a podcast episode after the Pistons game. So we have I believe, the Raptors on tomorrow night, actually. We'll probably go live for that one as well, right after the game. But then we play the Pacers Monday night. And I'm actually flying that night for vacation for Christmas and whatever. So I won't have a live reaction after that game, or probably a instant reaction in general. But then we will do the podcast episode, as that's the third game, for the next day at some point. So make sure to stay tuned for that. You can actually check out these podcasts. If you don't want to watch it, you can check them out on Spotify, Apple, Amazon, wherever you listen to your podcasts. And yeah, until next time, go Celtics.